Today, we're gonna make tofu from chickpeas. All right, so to make Burmese tofu is actually very, very simple. What's the first thing we need, Erica?
The first thing we need is a full cup of chickpea flour. Now, if you don't have chickpea flour, what can you do, Brian?
I actually did not have any, so I ground up garbanzo beans, dried, and sifted them so that we don't have any chunks, and that's our chickpea flour, because that's all it is. It's chickpea flour or graham flour, however you want to look at it. You also want to put that directly into a pot. You can put it in a bowl if you really want to, but why get dirty a bowl when you're going to put it in a pot anyway? What's next?
Next is water. You need 1.5 cups and roughly an additional 1 tablespoon.
I like to use a roughly 1.5 to 1 ratio. That way I get a nice firm tofu. If you want it to be a little less firm, you can use more water, though I wouldn't go too much more because it does get really soft very, very quickly. Okay, next.
Basically, that's all you really need to make Burmese tofu.
Yes.
However, it's not going to taste very good.
It'll be kind of bland and boring, yeah.
So our other ingredients are for flavor. So of course, we're going to add 1 teaspoon each of garlic powder and onion powder.
And I'm just eyeballing a teaspoon because it's what I do. That's garlic powder and onion powder. Okay, next.
Next is black pepper, 6 grinds exactly.
Very fine if you can. That was 6. Okay.
Next is a teaspoon of soy sauce.
We're using low sodium as we always do. Eyeballing it. Whoop. Open. That is your salt, basically. You can use actual salt if you want to. We are going to be putting some in. But this adds a little bit of a smokiness and a kind of a caramel flavor to it too. Okay?
Speaking of salt, we need to add 1/4 teaspoon of salt.
Now you can add more if you like. I'm doing about that much. And then you want to mix this up real good so there's no clumpy balls in there. You want no clumpy balls, none of that. And then I'm going to clear everything else off the stove. Okay, and once that's mixed up pretty good, you're going to turn the burner on. I'm going to like 7.5 to 8 on our stove. And at this point, I'm using a whisk, okay? But I'm going to be switching over to a spoonula really, really soon. All I want to do is make sure that I break up any clumps that have formed because they're not going to make for good tofu, right? You want it to be all completely hydrated. And that's it for the whisk. Enter the spoonula. And you want to continue stirring this. If you walk away, it's going to be ruined. I will tell you that right now. In the beginning, it's not as super critical, but as this starts to form, it happens pretty quick. And I'm going to turn the heat down once it starts to coagulate. What happens is you're cooking those chickpeas down and they start to thicken and they make a paste. And that's the whole way that this works. It's actually very simple. Now, some other things that I want to talk about is you can flavor this however you like, okay? Typically, when you use tofus, you can marinate them, you can do all sorts of things. Well, with this particular kind of tofu, you can't really marinate it afterwards. It won't absorb flavors quite the same way. It's not so much of a sponge. So because you're making it though, you can put those flavors in right from the beginning. So if you wanted to add spiciness to it, or you want to add tomato to it, which I don't know why you'd want to add tomato, but say you did, you can add that right in the building process. And just if you're using something that's very liquidous, you want to be careful that you don't over liquefy later on. But as you can see, this is like, it doesn't look like anything. It looks kind of like yellow milk. I mean, it just really doesn't look like much. Give it a couple minutes, it'll change. One secret that you're gonna learn real fast with this style of tofu, and this applies to a lot of styles of cooking. If you look, there's steam coming up. As long as there's steam coming up, that means there's liquid in there, and that means it's not burning. Now, I always get a little bit of a film on the bottom of the pot that isn't burned so much as stuck to it, and it comes out so easily if you just soak the pan in water later, but I'm thinking I might try to use that for something. It's like a skin. It's kind of crazy. It looks like soybean skin. But you'll see this will start to thicken, and I just scrape the bottom, make sure I get all the edges. See there? It's starting to thicken just ever so slightly. See? Did you see that clump? There was a clump. There's a clump. See? That's what it's going to start doing. Once it starts to form clumps like that, I want to turn that heat down to about 4.5. And I'm going to keep stirring. And as it cooks more, see how it's getting even thicker and thicker. You want to keep going until it's like very thick. I mean, it should almost be hard to mix. There's still a lot of liquid in here, so I know this is pretty far from ready. It generally takes about 10 to 12 minutes to fully cook this through. And you will, like I say, see a film form on the bottom of your pot. It's almost unavoidable. And I don't know that I would use non-stick to do this. I like using my stainless steel for this. Just seems to work really, really well. As you can see, it's thickening up a lot. It's already at the gloopy phase. We want it to be at the sticky phase. Those are technical terms that I just made up. Right now, it's kind of like polenta. It's really thick. And in a way, it kind of is very much like polenta because I believe you can actually do the same thing with cornmeal, which that's another experiment that I'm gonna have to try sometime. Okay, now remember what I was saying before about the steam. There's still steam coming out, which means there's still liquid in here. There's always gonna be a little bit of liquid, but you wanna make sure to get out as much as you can to keep it from being too loose. So this is where if you had added more water earlier, you'd either have to cook it a lot longer or leave it looser, and it might not set up exactly the way you want. So I want this to be more of a firm tofu, almost like a cheddar cheese consistency is really what we're looking for. See, still no film on the bottom of that pan, so I know that we're still okay. Just seems to always happen. And if you don't get a film, it's okay. It just means maybe you have a different heat than I did, but it's all right. The hotter it is, the quicker this is gonna happen and the more likely you are to burn. That's why I turned it down quite a bit, but I'm using an electric burner, so it's still really, really hot still. Lots and lots of steam coming out. You'll hear it hissing and bubbling at you. Oh, we're starting to get a little bit of that film on the bottom. I don't know if you could see that. So you can see the texture of it now. See, it's still a little bit gloopy. You want it to really be like super where it doesn't want to come off the spoon, pretty much. This is the tricky part. This is the only real trick to this, is you want to cook it until it's just about ready to burn, but not burned. And as you can see, I have that film in the bottom of the pan. That usually tells me that I'm pretty close to being ready. It still feels a little bit creamier than I really want. It should hold its shape when it hits the pan. It's kind of still, yep, it's a little loose still. There's still lots of steam coming out. I know I'm making a big deal about the steam and all that kind of thing, but to me, that's part of the sensory part of cooking. You have to know when the food is cooked. I can't tell you exactly how long this is going to take because a 20 or 30 degree difference on your stovetop could make all the difference in the world for time. So it's more you cook it till it's done, and these are the signs you look for. See all that steam coming out? That's still a lot of steam in there. A lot of liquid is in that pot. All right, it's really getting thick now. You can see the difference. It's holding its shape much better. We're almost there. Just another couple minutes probably. Okay, we're pretty much there. I'm gonna take this off the heat. We're gonna move the camera so that I can show you putting it into a container. All right, so once you have it to that point, you can totally see that kind of skin on the bottom. We want to get it into a container. I like to use glass. It tends to separate from the glass really easily. There's no oil or anything added to this. This is, just basically it's pure chickpeas. And just scrape out as much as I can, like that. Put that pan in water. Then what I like to do is just scrape it off of the spatula with a spoon, and you end up doing the back and forth thing. You get a little in the spoon and you get it on the spoonula, and you just go back and forth until you get the vast majority of it into your glass container here. You want to work kind of quickly because this stuff is starting to set up already. As you can see, it's getting super, super thick. And then I like to push it into the corners, spread it around, smooth it out. Basically, this is where you're making the finished shape of your product. So you want it to be kind of, pretty. But as you can see, it's already setting up. Just get it into those corners a little bit. Had a couple of remnants there that we still got to get. And then This goes into your fridge for at least 2 to 3 hours. So once it's sat in the fridge for a few hours, you want to pull it out. Now, I actually made this one a little earlier, so this is not the exact one, but it's the same recipe. And I just wanted to show you how easily this actually comes out. Watch this. It just plops right out of the bowl. There's no oil or anything on that. And I just want to cut off a little side here, but we're going to show you some slow-mo as I do it.
Non più avrai questi bei panacchini, quel cappello leggero galante, quella chioma, quell'aria brillante, quel vermiglio d'onesco color, quel vermiglio d'onesco color, non più avrai quei panacchini.
All right, so I just cut off a couple of small pieces here just for us to try it. Now, this one I didn't sift as well as the one that we made on camera, so it might have a couple of chunks in it. But let that be a guide for you that you probably want to sift it. But if you check this out, look at the texture. It's very much like a cheddar cheese, like a firm cheddar cheese. That's the idea. And that, gives me ideas for how to make a really cool vegan style cheese. But it tears much like tofu does. It just has those kind of sinewy layers, but not fully. It's kind of a chickeny kind of thing. Works really great for that. And you can, go ahead. You can toast this up. You can eat it cold. You can heat. It's already cooked. So you can do a lot of things with it. And like I said, you can flavor it all different ways. The flavor, it's kind of mild. It does have more flavor than tofu though. Soy-based tofu. Actually, this is pretty good.
Yeah. Yep.
So, if you threw this in a pan and crisped up the outside of it or something like that, throw a sauce on top of it, this would be a wonderful tofu alternative. So if you are sensitive to soy or you just don't want to eat tofu all the time, this is a great way to make a tofu alternative. Stay tuned for a cheese-based chickpea tofu, maybe, if I can figure out how to make this work a little bit better.
Cheese replicant.
Cheese replicant, yeah, you know what I mean. A cheese-like product made from chickpeas rather than from some of the other stuff. But as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.